Rajagiri College of Social Science. We are so happy to have both of you present, sir. I'm sure it's going to be a lively and thought-provoking section for all of us. Last but not the least, very importantly, I welcome the pillars of our support, my dear fellow students, and all participants for gracing this section with your presence. Once again, I welcome you all, the national webinar. Hope you all will have a knowledge enriching section ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deepika. We are extremely delighted to have Dr. Vijay Shankar Ashokan, an electron microscopy researcher, Energy and Materials Division, Kalmas University of Technology, as our first speaker of the day. I welcome Ms. Ching from second year to introduce the speaker to the audience.
Good morning to one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure in introducing the first speaker of the day, Dr. Vijay Shankar Ashokan. Sir is presently working as an electronic microscopic researcher and energy and material divisions, Chalmers University of Technology since Jan 2020. Sir obtained his postgraduate degree in specializations of material science from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore, India, and carried out his research at Indira Gandhi Atomic Research Center, Kalpakkam, India. Before moving to Norway for his PhD, he was working as a technical officer at High Vacuum Company, Bangalore, India, and as a project assistant at Electronic Microscopy Lab, Material Research Center, Indian Institution of Science, Bangalore, India. Sir has in total 12 years of research experience at four different international universities, PhD from University of Bergen, Norway, short-term internships, University of Oslo, Norway during his PhD research, 4 years of postdoctoral experience at Jingen University, China, Chalmers University, Sweden. Sir is also an alumnus of Coimbatore Institution of Technology and PSG College of Technology. He also has a strong research collaborations with both these institutions and an organizing committee member of 2 international conferences conducted under Indo-Norwegian collaborations at Coimbatore Institution of Technology. In addition to these academic activity in Norway, Sir served as a Tamil teacher in Tamil school for 7 years. In Sweden, he is serving as a coordinator for Tamil school since 2018. He authored for 4 books in Tamil and 50 plus articles related to mother tongue, educations, global educations, environment awareness, economy of Indian Ocean, science, Dravidian movement, and LM. So far, Sir has published 23 research articles in high-impact journals from Nature, American Chemical Society, Royal Chemical Society, Springers, and Elsevier. Sir has presented his research at 21 international conferences held at India, USA, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, China, and Sri Lanka. He had delivered 25 invite talks, special lectures in Indian educational institution. We are honored to have amongst us, Sir. Thank you so much. Now over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Can I share the screen? So it means you have to stop this. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay. So how long is my presentation? Is it 30 minutes?
Yes, sir, you can take it on 25 to 30 minutes.
Okay, just let me know if it is exceeding. I can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So good morning to all. At least it's very good morning to me because it's 6 o'clock now, 6:30. I think it's afternoon to you all. Anyway, good afternoon if you are sitting in Indian zone. So it's really a good opportunity or the needed opportunity or needed discussion platform in the corona pandemic period, in particular towards the educational orientations. So we need to think in all the aspects. We need to build a platform in all the aspects related to education. So it become validated or it become authenticated or scrutinized, we can say in other terms, to make the politicians, to make the structure building authorities to think over in this collective angle from the society, which thinks in broad meaningful angles. So with this one, the changing scenarios in educational institution, Boon or Bane. It's a national webinar series organized by PG Department of Social Work. So it's a good start off point, I think. At least from my perspective, I start with comparing a global and Indian education in this Corona pandemic. I feel that's more needed, as I am serving in international academic institutions. I have wide or broad experience in the European countries, in particular with the Nordic countries. I have seen many different angle of educational uh, activities, we can say. Either it is related to school or related to the universities. I have seen different activities even before the Corona pandemic. When we talk about global education, the education itself varying a quite lot when we compare to the Indian education. At least as I have grown in India, I can see the differences in different angle. So with this Corona pandemic period, I would like to get on a picture covering all the things related to like a pre-pandemic and also the post-pandemic. So we need to build a thinking platform on educational perspectives related to all the what we can say, related to all the activities going on internationally, because as we are booming into like an internationally stronger country, we need to get down into the international platform, right? So even with the educational activities, we need to think in this angle. So I wanted to get on with studies on global education, and in particular with the Nordic education. So we can have a discussion over it later on if you have questions on particular topics or particular suggestions. We can make a discussion. So what is education first? So education is a process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits. So education itself is not constrained to anything. It's include all the broad perspective of teaching, training, storytelling, discussion, and even the research. And it's not only taking place within the closed boundaries, or it's not only taking place within the walls. It's start from the early childhood. So whatever we learn without anyone or without any educator, still we are educating ourselves in broad perspective of uh, either from the childhood, either from the society value, or the family thinking. So however, the intelligent plus character, that is the goal of true education always, right? So that if that is the basic education, we need to think in the current world situation, current world order situation, what education is. So as I am living in Nordic country, I wanted to have a very quick slides over how the education system is classified in the Nordic countries, even though this slide particularly maintaining about or mentioning about a Swedish school system. This is the broad criteria in the Nordic countries, which includes Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland, and Sweden. So it covers 9 years of compulsory education. The preschool activity is different from that. So the 9-year compulsory plus 3-year upper secondary school is in school activities. Then the university or the college life starts. So here the Nordic model basically consists of free access to all. That's a primary thing in Norway or Sweden, in Denmark, Finland. So no tuition fees. Even the students are paid to study. That like a study support they are getting from at least from the age of 13 or 14. So the practical competence converted to academic knowledge here. The knowledge sharing between students is organized, well structured, decorum available even from the school education. So when we study or when we wanted to think about the Nordic countries, we have a lot of things. Even it's covered out of the topics which I mentioned here. Just for the time of convenience, I just pointed out few things which needed to be that's a model which exists in these Nordic countries. In past 85 years, since 1930s, we can say most of these countries, like all the 5 countries, have the social democratic parties. So that's like whenever or whoever studies the education model on the Nordic model of platform, they try to link these things with the political parties which being in rule. So that's how it's related to each other. Even Denmark stressed uniformity of education less than the other Nordic countries in perspective of local or regional aspects. But Norway and Finland have more like a regional aspects included. Here it's a more decentralized unit of education is a major major focus or major criteria in these Nordic countries. So even Sweden used to get input from OECD every 2 to 3 years. That's an organization for economic cooperation and development. Sweden hired this organization. This is an international organization. They want OECD to study the Swedish model of education and ask them to give suggestions or the comments over how to improve the education further. So the one which I show in this slide is on which is available from 29th January 2019. So they primarily stress Swedish education is one of the best among the European countries, but within the Nordic countries, or when they wanted to be taken to the global angle in a high standard, they have given few suggestions which out of which one is like a mother tongue education. In Nordic countries, it's basically a mother tongue based education from the school to the university and to the research, we can say. In other angle, out of their own mother tongue based education, they're also providing, as of now, at least in my city, they are providing 70 language towards the mother tongue based education training. So in Sweden, in my city alone, there are 70 language teachers available to give mother tongue based education to the immigrants, to the asylum seekers, or to the skilled immigrants, we can say, like us. So OECD is now suggesting Sweden to consider other immigrant society to be included into the mother tongue based education. So it means within next 5 years, they want at least 100 to 110 language training towards mother tongue based education. So everyone who come to Sweden from anywhere or any part of the world get their own education, get the education through the mother tongue based model. So that's a basic criteria of Nordic model of education. With this one, I am moving to even have written a book in Tamil, which is like a mother tongue education. That's actually in Tamil, it's called Taimori Kalvi, Ulag Arasiyalum Kalviyalum, which I published very recently in this year, which have covered all these points, including the Nordic and the European based education system, how it exists and how it was tuned itself with challenging the global education or setting the parameter towards the global education paradigm. So I feel Nordic model have many things to be we need to study those things to get on into the international platforms. So that's why I have written this book. So with this one, I wanted to move further. So with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 goals, out of which the fourth one is the quality education. So the quality of education in terms of transforming the world or empowering the world, the quality of education means or included three major aspects, at least in my points when I was going through all the things. One is the decentralization of education, academic institutes, and the mother tongue based, and the social values, which include also human rights angle. So the quality of education in global terms can be classified into these three terminologies. Even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights considered these things from the beginning of the Universal Declaration concept when they adopted in 1948. They have clearly pointed out with the right to education, which also reaffirmed in various treaties from 1948 to 2020. There are many conventions, there are many paradigm they set based on education, out of which the Convention Against Discrimination in Education. So I wanted to take this angle because I am going to compare these things with corona pandemic situation later on in my slide. So I wanted to get on with what are the global education, what are the global perspectives in the education being exist before corona. That's why I'm just bringing all this angle, all these points. So one is the right to education, right to access of education to all, and Convention Against Discrimination in Education, like elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, discrimination against women, rights of child, then rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. All these points are validated in the international platform to make a sustainable and high reach of education and the uniform reach of education globally. So that's why it is considered under human rights angle. Even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have certain standards in which they have mentioned in Article 26 about the right to education, where they are stressing the point education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages, and elementary education shall be compulsory. That's why I pointed out my slide in Nordic based education, where these Nordic countries have 9 years of compulsory education and free education. So now I'm comparing how these Nordic countries developed their own education model in relation to this type of universal human rights angle, particularly mentioned in Article 26. So the technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. The education shall be directed to the full development of human personality and to the strengthening of respects for human rights and fundamental freedoms. And parents have the prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to the child. So here the parents have complete rights as per the human rights angle. And Article 29 states development of child's personality, talents, and mental and physical ability to their fullest potential, the development of respect for human rights and fundamental freedom, and for the principles enshrined in the Charter of United Nations, and the respect for the child's parent is or her own cultural identity, language, values, for the national values of the country in which child is living, and the country from which he or she may originate, and for the civilizations different from his or her own. Wherever the child is living, wherever the parent is moving, it doesn't matter. It doesn't relate to the boundary. It doesn't relate to the nationality or geographical location. Child's and child's parents' cultural identity, language must be respected in education or in the educational institutes. That's also must be considered. That's a point here I wanted to stress. So with all this human rights angle, I would like to move on to the next stage. That's a sustainable goals mentioning the high quality education. The second point is about the decentralization, which have the accountability, autonomy, and authority service delivery. The decentralization here, what like an expert mentioned about in particular towards education, is not the deconcentration, it's a devolution of power. That should be very clear. So the deconcentration have less decentralized unit, but the devolution of power have more decentralized power, where they have set paradigm from the national level to the subnational level government or the state or province government. Then there are some principal agent then with relation to the particular institutional maintenance and the relationship. So that's the second angle I wanted to stress. The third angle I wanted to stress is again with the mother tongue based education, where even Nelson Mandela talk about if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his mother tongue, that goes to his heart. Even Jim Cummins, a professor from Canada, he wrote many books on mother tongue based education and the quality of education in the international perspective. He also emphasized the children who come to school with a strong foundation in their mother tongue develop strong literacy abilities in the language used at school and succeed educationally. So even the mother tongue education consists have impact on the individual psychological and personality development. It's actually an indicator for the cultural identity and basis for learning another language. Right. So the the slide which I'm bringing here is the chapter adopted in 2020 in General Assembly of United Nations, where it talks about education, language, and the human rights of minorities in particular. So why I am bringing this slide is, this should be, we should think in this aspect, even the minorities education, even the language of minorities, or the immigrant, or the asylum seekers should be considered even after pandemic period, where they didn't have access, where they didn't have chances to access to the quality of education what so far I was talking in my previous slides. So that's even considered. Even when I was reading through like few articles from the United Nations or the UNESCO policies, and also relation to the pandemic situation, which is stressed under UNICEF criteria, or the UNICEF consideration in their platform, they were keep on talking about the education should be accessible to all, irrespective of where they are from and how they are shaped their life and how their life is made up of. That's a different story. But within a national approach, or when a nation uh, provide education to their own boundary or within their geographical uh, uh, limitations, they should give education to everyone. Even if that's the point I wanted to tell. When you are considering these things, even we are lacking a lot, but in internet, in or like a digital world, we are lacking lot and lot. So we are lacking very far when we are thinking in this aspect. I will come one by one. So I wanted to tell. Okay, this is the goal which is adopted by UNESCO, at least from 2005. They are making their sustainable development model of international education or the global education through the multilingual education. Because there are many countries have different languages. Even in, for example, if you see very small island of Papua Guinea, they have nearly 841 languages. In Philippines, it's 183. As you know, in India, there are widely diverse languages, or classified languages, or official languages in different states. And in Thailand, it is 71 languages. So if you don't understand, how can you learn, right? So that's why this model brings in mother tongue based multilingual education, where it's also considered in Thailand's meet in 2005 or 6. Then they try to develop their model, or try to implement this model in as many countries as possible. Even in these studies, when I was going on through the statistics and reports, they even considered India as a point. They considered many different states, about how the education is provided in the language which is not understandable by the people of that state. So these are the things considered earlier. Then they framed a new policy called mother tongue based multilingual education. So the first language first, that's a social language or the family language, or we can say mother tongue based. So the first language is the first in the education, then it's transformed to multilingual education later on, with respect to the like a region where they are growing, or with respect to the educational institute which providing the education. So it's always first language first. With this one, I'm moving here. So when we talk about all these things in a global paradigm, now I'm moving step by step to the next stage in this talk. There are 166 countries adopted Convention Against Discrimination in Education. That's a 1960 convention, which I mentioned earlier in my slide. There are 136 countries have safeguard the right to education in their constitution itself. There are 166 countries have legal provision for free education. There are 183 countries have legal provision for compulsory education. So even though all these countries have tried to adopt the international terminologies or the global paradigm within the education system, still there are like an we can say girls still face far more barriers to schooling than boys. That's maybe related to the poverty, that's maybe related to the child marriage, that may be related to the distance to school, or lack of toilets, or not safe, or not enough female teachers looking after young siblings already working. So these are the possible paradigms which makes girls still face far more barriers to schooling than boys. So even these countries adopted such a long way, or such a long progress in their educational system development uh, towards achieving a high standard education. Still there are countries lacking in terms of girls. So a paradigm which already exists before corona situation, right? So let's start now, like a post-pandemic situation, or during pandemic, we are now adopting to the digital world. So the digital world education have their own progress since 1728. That's the first world's first distance learning course is established in Boston. The lessons were sent by mail. That's maybe the first progress in a school education system, or the education system itself crossing the boundaries. Then it's take its own shape. Even in 1976, if you see here, the Phoenix is founded for adult online education. And then there are computer-based learning for adults from 1982. And there are some improvement. The world introduced to Blackboard and e-college in 1999. And from 2002 to 2008, there are forms of partnership with over 1,500 accredited colleges and universities across the US to offer 100% online certificate programs. And from 2012, there are 96% of traditional universities offer online courses. So there are steps which already taken in towards online education globally in different areas, we can say, or different regions, or with different courses. So this is not new to the pandemic anyway. However, we are now talking about in an accessibility manner. As we saw in our previous slides, the human rights angle, or the global high standard education terminologies, paradigms, giving a stress to the point that that's basically accessibility to all. So that's a basic education primarily everyone should think of. It's not about how the quality of education is provided with number of when considering the percentage of students getting into the college or universities and they are finishing off the college and getting job. It's not about that thing. You need to provide 100% education accessible to everyone. From that, the quality of student gets on from stage by stage to the next one. So that must be the consideration point here. When we see the global scenario of education in corona pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic had disrupted several sectors globally, and education is no exception. As we know, the education sector has taken a hit with closure of schools, universities, coaching institutes, and other educational institutes across the country, affecting students and aspirants preparing for their future. In this situation, online education has become the talk of the town and gaining a lot of traction during the lockdown. Education experts believe that learning should not stop, hence the education has moved from offline to the virtual world. But according to the recent report, like from the UNESCO monitoring, over 160 countries have implemented nationwide closures, impacting over 87% of world students' population. India has more than 300 million students in 1.4 million schools and 51,000 colleges, of which learning has been come to the halt after the lockdown. The recent report from UNESCO again, like 1.26 billion children worldwide affected by school closure due to the pandemic, as we know. This is from another report. This is 72% of world's population anyway. So India comprises over 320 million. So there are two different reports, because one from earlier stage of closure and another from another period after they are getting the statistics after later. So the children and youth out of school due to COVID-19 closure, that 89%, as we know, already are affected, out of which they classified into 1.5 billion children and youth, including 743 million girls. So young people classified as NEET out of this. NEET means as we know. That's a different part of story anyway in our education system. We here globally the NEET means not in education, employment or training. That's called NEET. A person who is unemployed, not in school or vocational training. So that's actually 267 million people considered as NEET globally, out of which 2 of 3 are young women. So this is the paradigm now. This is the recent report which tells the story in a global angle. So when we take globally in another report, the learners affected by school closure caused by COVID-19 as of 30 September 2020. So it's almost a very recent report. Countrywide closure, if you see, there are more red zones, which means the countrywide complete shutdown, including India. The partial school closure, including here in Australia and in Canada, US, and here in few European countries and England and African countries exist. So no school closures, it means the blue zone, including Sweden and Norway, where I am situated. So we didn't have closure of schools. Our schools are running irrespective of closures or irrespective of lockdown. For example, in Norway, there are lockdown, but in Sweden, there were no lockdown at all, out of which schools were running regularly from the beginning. Not even a single day was closed, or not even a single day went on for online training. It was like offline. So that's mostly the situation in European countries. But the situation varies within the European countries, where the Sweden has strictly followed non-closure of schools, but however other countries have followed certain days online and offline alternatively according to their situation. So there are some academic break, in particular in African countries. So the complete break relation to the COVID pandemic halt. So when we are now moving to the Indian situation, so total of 320 million learners in India have been adversely affected as per the UNESCO report, as we know from the previous slide. So there are situation made the transition from offline to e-learning. With a huge regional and household disparities in access to the internet and technology, this transition has not been possible for all students and educators. The rapid shift to e-learning prompted by the pandemic has resurfaced long-standing issues of inequality and a digital divide in India that must be addressed by future economic, education, and digitalization policies. As per the MSSW 2014 report, that's a national sample survey of estimation, report highlights that 32 million children were already out of school before the pandemic, with the majority of them belonging to the socially disadvantaged class in the country, which we need to consider seriously, because it's not after the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, we lost many students because of the socially disadvantaged situation. But think over it, when there is no equal opportunity, when there is no equal accessibility for the students of different economical zones or different economical platforms, the digitalization made them still get them out of school continuously. We need to get on these reports seriously. When we need to consider these things, maybe later on, when our government or any institutions provide more report on this. So the e-learning, as the name suggests, relies on the availability and accessibility of technology, as we know, but little or no availability of electricity. That's also a point of consideration. That's a different story. As we know, there are also possibility for the lack of electricity in some zones, or in relation to the like when we compare urban and rural, there are wide variation with accessibility to the electricity even, right? In 2017-18 survey, a recent report from the Ministry of Rural Development found that only 47% of Indian households receive more than 12 hours of electricity, and more than 36% of schools in India operate without electricity. So this suggests that while students from families with better means of living can easily bridge the transition to remote learning, students from underprivileged backgrounds are likely to succumb to inefficiency and a lack of adoption, either because of the inaccessibility of technology or the low quality of low education of their parents to guide them through tech savvy applications. With more than 630 million subscribers, India is a home to the world's second largest internet user base that we know from earlier report. But connectivity is still an issue, especially since mobile data rather than fixed line internet is the main source. The signal is often uneven, making it hard to stream video smoothly, and electricity supply is erratic, which means the device often run out of charge. So there's another report from key indicators of household social consumption of education in India that's based on 2017-18 in MSSW. Fewer than 15% of rural Indian households have internet access. A mere 30% of people surveyed age that's above 5 in rural areas, just 8.5% of females could use the internet. Girls in vulnerable households face increased domestic duties, including their inability to access online education, either because of the inadequate access to the internet and gadgets, or because the male child and his teaching are prioritized. The silent exclusion of children belonging to the families in distress may cause child labor and child marriage. In the southern state of Kerala, for instance, a teenager killed herself allegedly because her family could not offer a mobile phone or television. Right? This is a story. I wanted to stress, like from a single point from the news. That's a southern state of Kerala and a teenage girl. But this is not just one story or related to this one particular instance. We have came across many such reports, many such suicide attempts, or many stressed students. The psychological impact. There were many reports we came across. So we
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So just a minute. So can you wrap it up in some 5 minutes? Like
Yeah. Just 2 more or 3 more slides.
Okay. So thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'm just finishing up. Yeah. So we need to also consider this one. Then the regional disparity, which is the report available in this vforum.org. There's a significant difference among states in their ability to access internet on operate computers. There were clear report. This is able to operate computer in percentage and able to use internet. That's very widely within Indian states. There were even opportunity for ability to operate computer. That's maybe some percentage, but able to use internet, it varies again. So these points need to be considered. There were many reports available regarding the network strength, regarding the rural and urban quality or the internet facility available in rural and urban regions. So the economic reform policies have always leaned towards hyper digitalization, but for the long time, they have discussed how to innovate working and studying with the at-home technologies. However, the implementation of these policies has not addressed the educational inequalities that have today emerged as a crisis in the caste and class struggle in India. So finally, according to the Indian government national sample survey again, less than 1/4 of the households have internet access. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India indicates 78% of Indians have mobile phones, out of which only 57% reside in the rural area where the bulk of population resides. A recent survey on quantum studies show that out of 7,500 students, 72.6% use the mobile hotspot feature for internet connectivity, and 97% of them face signal issues. Only 15% use the broadband connection. Even before coming up the situation of the lack of gadget availability and an internet connection, there are more issues to consider about such electricity. That's what we need to consider in a second angle or the next perspective, because it's 33% received 9 to 12 hours and only 47% received more than 12 hours. Besides this, some schools also provide midday meals to the family below the poverty line. They act as a lifesaver for those people, but due to pandemic, around 9.12 crore Indian children lost access to midday meals. It's a strategic, right? So a final slide of maybe final 2 slides, I think. These points need to be considered because this is an Right to Education Act that which made free and compulsory education since 2009. Here, I wanted to stress again, whatever we saw in a global perspective, Indian rule also consider all these things like a development of child's knowledge, potentiality, talent, physical and mental abilities to the fullest extent. Learning through activities, discovery and exploration in child-friendly and child-centered manner, and medium of instruction shall, as far as practicable, be in child's mother tongue, making the child free of fear, trauma, and anxiety, and helping the child to express view freely, which is a major thing which is lacking in digital classrooms. A comprehensive and continuous evaluation of child's understanding of knowledge and his or her ability to apply the same. So when you are reading these things, just try to compare this situation or these points related to the digital education. We know where we are lacking, right? So education can reduce poverty, but only if it's provided equally. That's a more point I wanted to stress again. Education can reduce poverty, but only if it's provided equally, right? So with this one, I'm just concluding my talk. Then yes, if you have any questions, still I'm ready to answer.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking us through the Nordic model education and the educational framework in the global perspective with relation to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and stressing out the importance of mother tongue based education, and finally the global scenarios and the Indian scenarios of what the pandemic has done to the education system. Thank you so much for such a thought-provoking session, and it has given us a lot of insight. And thank you again, sir. We are happy to have our next speaker, Dr. Anish K.R., Assistant Professor, Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, Kerala. I now invite Mr. Madhivanan from first year to introduce the speaker.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. It gives a immense pleasure in introducing the second speaker of the day. Dr. Anish completed his MSW from SSUS, MPhil from MHAT Bangalore, and doctoral degree from MG University, Kottayam. Dr. Anish has 21 years experience in social work practices, research and teaching. He works in Rajagiri College of Social Sciences as assistant professor. He has academic collaboration with University of Utah, USA, Catholic University, Germany, Queensland University of Technology, Australia, Wuhan University of Technology, China, and University of Eastern Finland. Sir has received several grants for research and different funding organizations such as Australia, India, Indian Council, Australia on Health Social Work, German Academic Exchange Program, and UCG International for working with migrants and refugees, ICSSR and IMPRSS project on health and well-being interstate migrants, Government of Kerala. Sir is a founding member of Building Networks and Frameworks for Global Social Work Education, Research and Symbiosis of Migrants and Refugee Issues, and Practical Perspectives. He served as Chairman Board of Studies of Mahatma Gandhi and Kannur University in Kerala. He is the Vice President and Coordinator of Skill Academy of Kerala Association of Professional Social Workers. We are so proud to have you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for the big introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be present here with you all, talking about this issue of online education and the new scenario. Now, Dr. Vijay Shankar has already beautifully mentioned about the context of global education and its impact because of COVID-19. And he also discussed about various loopholes in Indian education system, which will have difficulty in fulfilling the needs of education of all our children, where the equity is a big issue. Within that framework, I was asked to talk about the positives of the education in this modern scenario. So I will be speaking from my own experience of using technology in online education, so that we go through some experiences. So I will share my screen. Okay, so so our discussion today is on changing scenarios in education institutions, whether it's a boon or a bane. So my focus will be more onto the boon part of the education system. So let us start first with my 25 minutes of presentation, which I have already put my clock on. So I will try to finish in that time. So let us active, be participating in the whole process. I'll be asking you a few questions. Please be with me. Now, the question of Corona COVID-19. When I did my previous several webinars, I had a lot of blue lines in the left side. But now you see, after a gap, now we see large chunk of the countries have started increasing the COVID-19. We were expecting that COVID-19 will be over by November, December, and we'll be able to go back to classes. But now the situation is not that good, where we have difficulty sending our students back to classes. But we have to live in this world. We need to stay positive in this VUCA world. The VUCA world is a world which is created by COVID-19, which has made very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situation. We have to go forward with this situation and how we go forward. That's very important. So I'll be looking at a positive side of it without forgetting the limitations we have with regard to access to education, access to technology. With that limitations, I'll talk about this context. Now, can somebody tell me how many squares can you see on the screen? Just be participating in my process. How many squares do you see on my screen? Can somebody unmute and tell?
16.
16, okay. Any other options?
20.
20, okay. This is like an auction, so anything more than 20 can be answered now. It's like an auction now.
21, sir.
21.
22.
22.
17, sir.
17. Oh, no, nothing less than 21 now. 21, more than that, 21 now.
Yeah, 17, sir.
Oh, no, 17 is
23.
23, okay. 23.
23.
Anyone has more than 23? Now it's like an auction. So upwards. 23 onwards. 23. We don't have much time to waste on that. Let us
25.
25. Okay, good. Anyone else want to add more? 25 now. Auction is going to be closed now. 25. Okay, so when we saw this picture in the beginning, we saw only 16 squares. That is a common sense. So when we look at common sense, we see that. But when we look further, we could see up to 25. But if you look further, you will find 30. That is the number. So that means for any issue, there are, when we look in the first line, we will have only the common sense, that is 16. But when we look forward, we'll see more and more options. So I think in this context of COVID-19, the world has explored new ways of education, new ways of addressing the issue of education. So now looking at this particular thing, Dr. Vijay Shankar already mentioned about the education institutions. You see 51,000 higher education institutions are affected because of COVID-19. 993 universities, 39 plus colleges, 10,000 plus standalone institutions been affected, where 32 crores of children have been out of school or colleges. So the large number of the 32 crores of students are out of colleges. So now the COVID-19 had impact on that. So the coronavirus had impacted our education system, affected the functioning of all education systems. But we have not stopped there. We had a digital initiative. So if you look at India as a country, you find that all these have not evolved after COVID-19, which was there already. As an academician who was involved in the academic curricula aspect of the universities, the government has already instructed few years back, 2 years back, with an order saying that at least 20% of your curriculum has to be made into online mode. Means the students who take courses on Swayam platform can be transferred to their graduation or post-graduation program. That's the government's order, which was not fulfilled throughout because of the several limitations Dr. Vijay Shankar already mentioned. But you see, there are list of programs government of India has been introducing. I've not taken any state government initiatives. There are so many other state government initiatives. But when we look at from a technological perspective, India has become so digitally revolution has happened in India in higher education. So we look at the programs like NEET, National Education Alliance for Technology, Swayam platform, Vidwan, Sakshat, E-Adhyayan, and E-Gyan Ghosh, Gyan Darshan, spoken tutorials. There are so many programs which are there in our country, which are definitely helping us to go into a framework of better learning and education. So without forgetting the limitation, but I'm talking about the positive side of it. That's what I'm focusing too much on these aspects. So you see, all these initiatives have been there in India, our thing. The new normal. Now we have started using online platforms. I would say something we would have seen after 10 years, we have started seeing now. Our teachers' capacity, I did a study with teachers, our teachers' capacity to use technology has multiplied at least 10 times. Most of the teachers felt that I would have never used a Zoom if there was no Corona or COVID-19. And online teaching has come as a reality. And we are sitting in a platform now, webinars. You see, now people by joke say that they say that the number of webinars have become more than that of COVID-19. But see, now Dr. Vijay Shankar sitting in Sweden is speaking to us. So the technology has given us an opportunity to come together. Now we have possibilities of blending of learning where we have a lot of asynchronous and synchronous modes of learning. It has become a reality. Now classrooms have become flipped classrooms. So earlier a teacher-centric education, now it is we are fixing that or moving away from teacher-centric education to more student-centric education. In a flipped classroom, what happens? Earlier in our classrooms, we used to teach lessons and give the assignments or a homework for the students. Now we do the different way, opposite side. We ask the students to watch a video which includes the content of the material they need to learn. Then we will do discussion in the classroom. I do that very often in classroom. I found that is much more beneficial than our earlier mode of education. So whatever the student can learn by themselves can learn at their pace, and the discussions, the inputs required from teacher side can be done in the classroom. My score of education, we have an assessment every semester, midway of the semester and after that. My score out of 6 was 4.6 before I introduced my technology based learning. Now my score is around 6. I'm not exaggerating. It's near to 6, 5.96 and 5.8 to 5.96. So I found that the flipped classroom has become a reality, which is very much important in higher education because a lot of student-centric learning. So there are a lot of terminologies coming up, web-based teaching, computer-based teaching. Now this is our focus on higher education. How do we focus on education? So we are now looking at more of higher order thinking. Basically, we don't focus on remember aspect. We don't focus too much on understanding. We focus on to the higher order thinking like applications, analyzing, evaluation, creating. So our focus of education based on revised Bloom's taxonomy is on to the higher order thinking, especially in the higher education. So the technology has brought in a lot of opportunities for us to use this methodology. I'll be sharing some examples in the coming slides. Now, the technology has made our learning more possible. This is a model which I don't want to teach you now because that's not our purpose now. Just to tell you this, that this is a model of education using technology. So some of the SAMR, the S and A stand for enhancement of technology-based education, and M and R stand for transformation. Those who are interested definitely can go back to Google and find out this material because which is slightly difficult for us to talk about the whole thing. But I will show one more slide which will take the view information. So technology, there's a place where there's no technology, then there is a place where we have started substituting. For example, instead of a classroom teaching, we offer a recorded video to students. That's substitution. So just nothing more than that, just substituting your education through classroom teaching through a video or a live classroom. That's the first level. Augmentation led to next level where we have some functional improvement in technology-based teaching learning process. And we go to the redefinition, that's the last part of it, which will replace many of the things of education which can be done without a teacher. But fortunately, for teachers, the good news is that the McKinsey study in 2016, which says that teaching is or education is one of those areas which cannot be replaced totally by education, by technology. Now, if you look at many other areas, manufacturing, most other areas, which can be replaced by technology, but the McKinsey study in 2016, you can go back and search in Google and find out, which clearly says that in the downward level, it says that education is something which cannot be replaced by technology only, but technology can always support our education process. So what are the benefits of online teaching? I have a small activity for you. So you can actually, I will just post one link in your chat box. So please take this link. I'm just trying to find out the chat box where it is. So 1 second, please. So I'll post this link in a chat box. You may please click the link and give your answer to this question. There's only one question. what are the benefits of technology-based teaching, learning? Okay, just one question. Please try to answer your this one question by clicking the link. Okay. Okay. I will get responses which will be shown here. So what are the benefits of online teaching you perceive as teachers, students in my audience? I don't know who all are there. I expect that there are teachers and students. What are the benefits of online teaching? Now we talked about difficulties. Definitely Dr. Vijay Shankar very clearly talked about difficulties with regard to equity, with access. But what are the benefits? I got one response which says safety. Now, shall I have more responses? I want you to be engaged in my online session. So thank you. Thank you. Next, second response come. Global accessibility. Yes, we have people coming from various parts of the world. Now, Dr. Vijay Shankar is able to get up in the morning, 6:30 in the morning to engage a session with us, which was not possible in earlier context, which was never thought about. Now we have done several programs with technology. Now 3 responses: ease of access to data, self-paced learning, global connectivity, flexible learning. Yes, some of the benefits of online teaching is that there's a lot of flexibility. You can learn at your pace. You can record your video and see it later. So now this webinar is happening online and we are live streaming on YouTube. So if you want to watch this lecture again after some time, hopefully you not, but the YouTube video is available. So you can go to YouTube and do that. So 4 responses out of 75, 76 people in my audience, I got only 4 responses. That means that is one of the limitations of technology. Sometimes you do not get actively engaged. If you do not get actively engaged, learning will not happen. But if you actively get engaged, you are all part of this learning process. 76 people got 8 responses, 10%. So that may be the reason. So we have to do a research on how many people are actively engaging the learning process, which is sometimes difficult because people go behind certificates of learning, or sometimes you want to have a baggage of certificates of online learning and things like that. Anyway, good. So we got 9 responses. The thing which is projected highly here is accessibility and flexibility, these 2 keywords. So technology has given us these 2 things, accessibility and flexibility. A lot of the points are here: safety, self-paced learning, flexibility, all have come up very well. So we don't waste much more time on this because we want to go further. So we got 11 responses. Thank you. So I go back to my slide again. Okay. Where is my slide? Sorry. Let me close this. Let me take my slide. Okay, I'm here. So the benefits of, you mentioned those. Now this is a very complex slide. Don't worry about the content, but this is one thing which you have to, you can again go back, and I just want to send you with some self-paced learning process. So you can go back and search pedagogy wheel, the pedagogy wheel. Okay, there's a small spelling mistake in the picture, which is not my picture, all from Creative Commons, which is licensed, open licensed material. So no worries. So this talks about this picture. I don't want to talk about the content of the picture. This talks about how the Bloom's taxonomy and the SAMR model can be linked. And the Bloom's taxonomy, we say that there are certain contents to be remembered and understood. There are certain contents of education which need to be created, applied, analyzed. So this figure shows pictures of applications, maybe Android and Apple applications, which can be utilized for education. So talked about technological tools which can be utilized for teaching learning process, which is a beautiful thing. You can go back and search later for teachers and students. Now, so we are all becoming tech professors. We are all becoming technology oriented professors because we have no other way. We have to go with an VUCA world. We have to work in the new normal. So we are all becoming tech pro professors. So experiential learning through technology becomes very effective if you engage your participants. If you engage your participants, become very effective. And because science says that, the psychology says that human brain cannot attend to something for more than 30 minutes, but the attention span is much lower for the new generation. So generally people say, as a matter of fact, if you make a video, make it for 5 minutes. Earlier we used to make it for an hour, but now you say that you make a video for 5 minutes, not more than that, because our new generation learners will not focus on more than that. Or else if you're making a lecture, have some entertaining activities, make your slides impressive, in between the session, say nothing more than 20 minutes. So 20 minutes is a good time. So that we have to have engaged the online interactions where we have to engage the students with the content you are teaching, engage the students with your instructor, the teacher you are engaging, and you have to engage teachers by peers. So I'll be discussing about some of the tools which we often use for this. I have not much time to talk about all of these things, but I say asking questions, brainstorming, showing an interactive presentation, using of chat rooms, flipped classrooms, learning management systems, all can be effective in engaging your learner online. So you can use effectively. This is my learning management system on one of my courses, social work in healthcare intervention. So this is a learning management system which we use something called Moodle. Moodle is something which is open source software, which is available to education institutions, which we can use freely. Now, this is a new thing which is there called Google Classroom, which is very effective, handy in our hand because we have a Google account. This can be another learning management system which we can often use for technology-enabled learning. Now, this is I already did that. Now, how do you make interaction with the instructor? I can ask you questions. Question answer session is interaction. So in between a session, after 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you need to have a question answer. Then that's what I did. First, I started with a small figure and asked you questions. Now I had a Mentimeter exercise where you engage yourself. So assessment by using cues, chat, informal discussions, social media. In between, you can stop sharing your screen and get back to students and ask questions, ask them to open the videos. So there are a lot of ways of engaging. Since this being a webinar, I'm not attempting to do that, but social media usage, that is purely academic, not private social media usage. But people use nowadays, that's become a problem that if a student starts sending you messages at midnight, WhatsApp messages, sir, some doubts about that. When you're driving, you get messages. But social media can be very effective usage. I have used Facebook for teaching learning, not now, even before that. I used students to engage in private social media group where they can post their videos, then they can comment on their videos of friends and watch on the videos, all those things on social media. So all those things can be engaging the students. This is one of my social media group for my students who did my studies last semester, which is the study they have named it called How to Do That. Basically one of the tools. So this is a private group, so which is not accessible to outside groups. So you can see the private group. So only the students can access. So students will post their presentations, post their videos, small videos. Then each students can watch it. I can see how many of them watched it. All those things can be in a private social media. That's very effectively used because nowadays students use that very often. The flipped classrooms or they use their own Instagrams or Facebook. So you can use that. So in peer interaction, you can have breakout room interactions. So if you are using a Zoom platform, you have a breakout room function there. If you're using other platforms, you can actually divide a group, students into groups and ask them to make separate groups and you can visit the groups in between. So I do that. So Moodle workshops where you can have partnership where peer evaluation can be happening, collaborative activities can be given in groups, role plays can be done, audio. So I just now I finished my first session in my today's session. I had a life skills workshop happening for the last 3 days. Now students are engaged in whole session, 2-hour session. They are engaging my audience, the whole class, and they are doing role plays and video assignments. Online platforms are being used. So this is actually one of the activity which I do. This is called a peer evaluation assessment. This is called a workshop in Moodle, which we can use workshop for engaging our audience so that we are not making a monotonous lecture for the students. Rather, we are making it more interactive, collaborative, so that students can engage with us. So here in this assignment, I gave them some videos, some online web resources, asked them to write up a 2-page write-up. Then they were asked to um, uh, submit a 2-page write-up. Then that write-up was evaluated by 2 of their peer members so that they were able to get a feedback from students. That has a reinforcing effect for students so that the students are evaluating others' report. So they are able to get a lot of feedback from the whole process. So this is one thing which I have. This is another application called Wakelet, where you can share any messages, any material, video, audio, lecture. So students can be asked to collaborate on this platform and people can watch this lecture and write up and use the resources. This is another application called Padlet, where you can actually share this. If I had a 1-hour session, I would have made you to use this. The Padlet is an option where you can actually make the students write their points. This is a Padlet I have used in my classroom. Students have written their Padlets, so they're on views. So everybody's views will come to this platform. So that means sharing experiences can be done. You can also understand how many of our students are engaged. This is an application of Microsoft. This is called Flipgrid, which we allow us to share our videos. For example, small videos, small selfie videos. For example, this activity, who am I? So I use this methodology in one of my classes when I started my session. So I asked them to have a 30 seconds video, just a selfie video on themselves, talk about themselves, and which will come up in the whole page there. So students can watch others' videos and they come to know each other. So there are different ways of engaging your audience. So I'm telling why, because I want to talk about a positive side of it. So we can use learning management systems, we can use brainstorming activities like the Mentimeter exercise you did just now. We can use simple Google forms. You can just send a Google form to the chat box and ask the students to fill up forms, and you can show the graph over there. That is there. Then you can use social media. I told you Facebook, WhatsApp can be effective use. Assessment, we can use apps like Kahoot, quizzes, Google Forms. You can use online quizzing. Very interactive quizzings are available. We can use that. So basically, learning can be more very experiential, which can make it more engaging. So the students will not get bored. Students can engage in the learning process. So now, what are the benefits? I've asked these questions to students. I've sent a survey yesterday to my students as well as students in MSSW to fill up those questions. So what are the benefits? So students said many things. So what are the benefits? I do not want to take anything from the online. So these are the answers given by students. Let me show those answers. The first thing is that they said large array of information available. Now online, if you go to YouTube, everything is available. Many materials are available. You don't have to teach everything. YouTube materials. Comfort, you can learn from wherever you are. Comfort is coming up, very important question. Flexibility, when you have asynchronous mode of learning, you have a lot of flexibility. When you want to learn, where you want to learn, you can decide. Flexibility. Now the benefit is there could be a lot of self-paced learning, which I can decide when I want. Some students are fast learners. When you're in my live class, I am going in a very fast pace. Okay, I understand that. So what happens? Some students are not able to follow, so they can pause it and watch it later. They can pause it or go it, make it slower. They can watch. So self-paced learning is becoming very important. Wide use of technology, online learning process. It is very important. So all those things are happening. Wide use of technology is happening. Teacher can work from anywhere, anytime. You don't have to take leave. Now, if you look at teachers taking leave nowadays, it's limited because even if they're at home, they can manage from home. So teacher can work from anywhere, anytime. Student learns from anywhere, anytime. So this is not only for teachers, but also for students. Availability of teachers. Now, I think some of the students said, now our teachers are available online because when I have, for example, my research consultation or my consultation with regard to fieldwork activities, I give more time to my students because they're online and available in front of me rather than my face-to-face class, because then I am busy with so many other things. But when I fix a meeting now, I am available fully to students. So my availability has become more than the earlier time in online platforms. Now, self-motivation and self-responsibility, another thing, because students have to take responsibility. I cannot guarantee that all my 76 audience sitting in front of me are listening to me. No, I cannot guarantee it. Only student can do that. So that is a self-responsibility, self-motivation enhances. Virtual communication, collaboration has become a reality. Broader global perspectives are coming in. Now we got a lot of impressions about Nordic countries. Now, Dr. Vijay Shankar he talked about global scenario of education. He talked about education system in Nordic countries. Beautiful. So how do we get that other ways? You get a local resource person, you don't get that. Now he has had such a wider experience in a larger community. He's still telling about that. So that is becoming a benefit of online learning. So I think this yesterday's survey, till yesterday night, 12 o'clock, it got 57. Today it's some 62 or 64. Now see the graph, you can see extensive use of technology is the highest score, 70.2. 61.4% of students said flexible learning. Self-discipline 13%, 22.8%, 49% say there's a lot of opportunity for networking. Enhanced knowledge 28%. The 1% said nothing, no benefit, no problem. Okay, some of you may not feel it. So that is the thing. So, but in this context, we have to consider a few things. What are our learning outcomes? I have 1 more minute. So, what are our learning outcomes? We have to focus on that. Without forgetting that, we cannot do online. So we cannot do a lot of online gimmicks and say that, okay, I did my job. No, you have to look at what are the learning outcomes. What is learning out of my class, my session? I had a learning out for this session, so that's what I'm focusing on. How much are we able to engage my students? Because online education can be failure if you don't engage my audience. You should engage your audience. So I've explained a lot of tools which I personally used for engaging my students in my learning process. What are the time did you give time to process? If you load lot of information on the head of my students, and are they getting overwhelmed with a lot of information, they are stressed? Do you give time to process? I know that I have not given much time to process because it's a short presentation, But in classroom teaching, very importantly, we have to keep in mind, we need to give a time to process. And we also need to consider the cognitive load. How much cognitive load we are giving to students? Are we giving too many information in too short time? Are we giving too many information? So for a classroom, I definitely know that I was loading too many information this 25 minutes. My seconds are coming out, 3 seconds more. So what are the limitations? Now, Dr. Vijay Shankar already talked about it. I'm not going to touch upon that. So thank you for this patient listening. 25 minutes exactly. Thank you for this experience and opportunity. I stop sharing. If there are questions, I'm ready to take it. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, the organizer.
We thank you so much for the informative session, sir, for giving us the initiatives taken by the MHRD, the SAMR model, and the pedagogy wheel. And the main aspect is to engage the students, like using various more like Flipgrid, Padlet, breakout rooms, which will help out the professors out there to engage their students. Thank you once again, sir. Let's move on to the question and answer session. The first question is from Dr. S. Chandra to Anish, sir. Which online teaching method is most suitable for college students? Sir, you're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Okay. I think there are two ways of online teaching. One is synchronous and asynchronous. So basically, that's what I think sir was meant. Asynchronous mode is that you have no live lecture. It is already recorded, or any material given prior to the class or during the class. That material given is the asynchronous mode. Synchronous is the mode where you do the live session, or you engage with the students on a synchronous mode, face-to-face, or on a face-to-face interaction. So we used to have only synchronous or mostly synchronous mode in earlier times. Now we have both synchronous and asynchronous. So I would, from my opinion, now the flipped classroom model is the best model for higher education. What is a flipped classroom model? The flipped classroom model judiciously use both synchronous and asynchronous mode. For example, flipped classroom, say the basic philosophy is that in the Bloom's taxonomy, something of the lower order thinking, basically knowledge, understanding, those dimensions. If you want to fulfill those dimensions, you don't have to teach so many things. You can say that, okay, there's a website, you go and read that website. Or there's an online material, you can watch that. There's an online video material, you can watch that. So something the student can learn and understand by themselves at their pace can be given as the homework activity rather than doing an active engagement process in the homework. So something a student can watch at their pace. Only thing is that student motivation is very important there. So once the student read those materials and watch those videos and come to class, then you can engage them with active question answer session, or some sessions which will be more of active creation of materials. So what will happen is learning what they had previously will be reflected in the classroom context, where the teacher can help them to develop that learning more rooted through discussion or through engaging activities, so that the classroom becomes very interactive, classroom becomes very engaging, so that students will like to come back to session. What happens in other way is that if you keep on lecturing in a classroom context, what happens is that becomes quite boring for students. So students may close their video and go off. So I think my interest and so I also told you during the session, my assessment of the students was 4.6 to 4.8 prior, when I was using more of lecturing. And I started using more engaging session, even before COVID-19. It has gone to 6. There was occasion last year, my students scored me 6 out of 6. Now this year, I can show you the score. It is 5.96, which I find so good, because it is rewarding for you also as a teacher. But what I'm telling is that, so engaging session are more of flipped classroom. That methodology is, I find, more useful, more interesting for students. So I think flipped classroom, where synchronous, where you do activities, asynchronous, you make them to learn lecture, or PowerPoint can be given, they can read and study and come. But student motivation is very important, which is something very difficult. Probably Dr. Vijay Shankar will be happy about the Western society, where in those countries students are, I found much more responsible, because they maybe adult learners are more. That is one limitation. But technology limitations, I'm not forgetting that. I'm just in an idealistic world, I'm talking all those things. But there are difficulties we have in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next question is directed to Dr. Vijay Shankar, sir, from Angelin. Regarding learning mother language first, Will it enable the students to acquire another medium of language in later time if they are not fast-paced learners?
Yeah. Actually, as I told you, even the UNESCO and all these Nordic countries are very keen in this. That's why they framed a concept called mother tongue-based multilingual language learning. I can share my own personal experience because I have tested it using my children. I can say in another word, my children were born in Norway. They have brought up in Norway for first 4 or 5 years. When I have moved back to Coimbatore for 2-3 years, I have made them to study in Tamil school. That's in a government school, Tamil medium. That's my mother tongue actually. But later on, I have to come back to Sweden. So when at that point, my children know only Tamil. They didn't know even English. Okay. So when I came to Sweden and made them to join in Swedish school, believe it or not, and it may be very surprised to you, the school management appointed a Tamil teacher for him to make him to understand or bring him through his mother tongue to the Swedish learning later on. So that's a Nordic policy's best model, because they want the children to get down into the mother tongue first. Through that, they want the student to get into Swedish language. So the first 1 year, they have appointed a Tamil teacher. As I told you, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have 70 language teachers available in my city. So through that, my children got Tamil language education in Swedish government school. Then now he got Swedish language and English training. So that's how he succeeded now. At the age of 10, he know Tamil, English, and Swedish. So up to age of 7, he knew only Tamil. Right. So that's how the education system is framed globally by the experts, we can say.
Thank you, sir. The next question is directed to Vijay sir again. In the current scenario, the virtual learning is not effective sometimes. How can it be made more effective?
Yes, even Professor Anish was talking about that. Yes, we know there are I think out of global pandemic, let's just think out of context. We know that this virtual learning or e-learning have many benefits, as mentioned by Professor Anish. We are not like bypassing that one. But what we need to get on into is we need to make an hyper or the like a composite. We need to make, as I material science, I am using the word of composite. Sorry, it's like a mixed learning process. Like offline and online is needed, because we have even when we are running offline classes, there are many videos we used to watch through YouTube channels. There are many videos available with animations. So of course we need to combine these things. We need to bridge these gaps. So after this global pandemic era ends, when we are starting the new world again after this, so the real classroom starts. But now the students and the professors are trained to use online classes or online portal. So we need to make these combinations to make it or empower the learning processes. So I think all these past 1 year made us to think in a broad or a different approaches of learning or different approaches of teaching. So I think we are now moving into the next stage into after this pandemic, if I am focusing rightly.
Thank you, sir. The again is directed to you from Andrew Jairaj. Speaking on Indian context, where there are more migrant workers traveling constantly within the nation, what do you think must be done in education policies to improve opportunities and to include their children? On context of language, since most of the migrant workers are familiar only on their mother tongue, do you think in a diverse and developing country like India, it will be possible to cover education in all the languages within the country to bring inclusiveness?
Yeah, as I told you, the Nordic countries have succeeded. Our European Union law, if you are reading the European Union policies, which is framed for 28 countries, I think I have mentioned it in my book. If I remember rightly, it was coined, at least the recent one was coined in 2005. Then it was add-on points were added later on. So they were talking about all these things. So there are many policies which already made in Europe Union concept. There were many migrant workers, as I told you. There were particularly the asylum seekers, million people coming from different lands to the European Union in all the European countries. So they formulated a policy which even India can think about adopting it. The only thing is equal accessibility must be provided. So if you are filling the gap of equal accessibility or ability to get on into the platform of education, I think we can succeed in that. Apart from that, the second question is talking about the inclusiveness in the diversified land. I told you even in my presentation, the Papua New Guinea, a new small island, have 821 languages, out of which they now started to give 420 language in mother tongue based education policies. So even when a small island can make it, the really powerful country like India can easily make it out. Right.
Thank you, sir. The last question for the session is directed to Anish, sir. Not everyone has access to laptop or phone. Some may be from rural part with no proper network. So how can they take up education in online mode? Won't their education be affected?
Yeah, that's a big concern. I think when I was asked to talk about the boon of online education, I had to forget about some of those realities. So I really long for to talk about that. But that is something which is a reality in our country. There are many part of population. The clear statistics have been discussed by Dr. Vijay Shankar in his presentation. A lot of our population are not having access to online education, especially through a mobile phone or technology. Especially, you know that the direct cable connection is an important thing for online education, which many of the students do not have. And you know that even in developed countries, this is a reality. Even developed countries, even people living in New York have difficulty accessing literature, online materials. I know from many of my friends who work in US and other countries, they had difficulty providing online education because they moved totally to online these days because of the COVID-19. And you found that even there, the students have difficulty in accessing internet on a with high bandwidth and things like that. They moved from different platforms, from WebEx to Zoom to other platforms to help the students learn. So this is a reality in our country. Now that is a big reality which we cannot forget. But thing is that one of the good thing is that our country is growing much faster in terms of digital literacy and digital access. So I think the government, this is an opportunity for the government to grow further in terms of making internet available to the rural masses and communities like that. That's one thing. The good sign is that. Second thing is that now there are several governments, especially the Kerala government. I don't know that earlier when IGNOU started the on distance learning, they started e-Gyan Ghosh, and the e-Gyan Ghosh is actually the TV program which was through satellite. The online education was transferred to students from the rural communities. So we visualize that much earlier, not now, much earlier, which was maybe at least a decade, more than a decade time, which was there existing with these materials available to students on through TV, which is much more accessible to rural community also. Again, there are places which are not accessible. In our Kerala government, in the government schools in Kerala, I don't know about Tamil Nadu, I don't have awareness about that. The Kerala government, what they did was, they have started, so the school education in the state of Kerala is through television now. It is not through online synchronous mode, more of asynchronous. So they'll be telecasting the 20 minutes lectures morning, afternoon, and evening. So they can watch according to their availability, which is repeatedly telecasted. So the students can access the material. Now we are yet to study the benefit of that and how much being beneficial. All those things are yet to be studied, but still there are initiatives from the part of governments because we have nothing else can be done now. We cannot say that, okay, this year is zero year. There is no academics this year. No, we cannot say that the students, you will pass, you not pass next class, you are going to be staying in the same class. Not more possible. So in that way, whatever best is being done by governments and central as well as state governments, and let us hope that we will bridge this gap of accessibility. Now, this inequality is going to bring a big gap between the haves and have-nots, which is a reality, which I'm not forgetting, but which we have limited options, but there are positive signs that we are going to go further. Thank you.
Yeah. So just an add-on point is, of course, Tamil Nadu government has provided their school education website platform. They have uploaded many video lectures for +1 or +2 syllabuses even before 2 years. So they started to upload such lectures already.
More of asynchronous way is better in that way. Synchronous may be difficult.
Thank you, sir. One more question to Anish, sir. Fieldwork is a very important part of social work. How will online education bridge the gap for students to gain experience from field?
Okay, I think that's very important question in front of us, social work educators especially, because without fieldwork, how do you learn, make the students to develop the competencies required for social work practice? Now, and in the same platform, MSSW, I've talked about fieldwork, field practicum, and opportunities, how to do that. For example, basically, the simple answer is that we have to look at the competencies we need to achieve through the fieldwork. So some of those competencies we can develop online or through virtual means, but some competencies still are at question, which we need to think how we are going to bridge the gap. So definitely we are across the world, we are in the process of thinking how we can fulfill the requirements of fieldwork through practical also has become mostly in science subjects. Now practical has become a big issue, but now the virtual practicals are happening, which are good. Virtual lab is happening, which I think which are okay. I don't know chemistry and all. Vijay sir will be able to tell that. And the labs are happening, but which are not real situations. So we have the limitation of fieldwork. I don't know. We have to find out innovative ways of practicing that. But there is always a limitation of that, because this some of the competencies which we need to have developed through direct interaction with clients and direct interaction with the community, which is lacking. But now I many times I find that many places now students have taken voluntary initiative to go to the field and learn, irrespective of COVID-19. That is voluntary because colleges cannot insist people to do that. But students can take initiative. I know many of my students are volunteer with organizations, and those who want to do field work in hospitals and places like that, with many effort, they had to go for COVID testing and things like that. But they did that, and they are able to do that. So that is another way, because we are learning to live with COVID-19. So probably most of the things which we require face-to-face interaction need to happen. That's the answer.
So one last question from Ms. Agnes to Anish, sir. What are the new possible ways of conducting examination other than paper-based exams?
The new ways of examinations. See, now we have done all exams. Now I can very well confidently tell we can online ways, we can do many ways of exams. One way of exam is that we can use online Google form based or your learning management system based exams. Online exams can be done, which again a problem for many students who have not access to internet and things like that. So one is that online exams, what we do is with the Google forms, we can quizzes, or with such assessments can be done. We can do quizzes and other things. We can proctored exams, exams and control situation can be done. Second thing is that we are now effectively using written exams. So we recently did our written examination where we made the students to give the questions to students. The responsibility of not copying is theirs, and they wrote the exam within time span. They took a photo of their answer scripts, uploaded to the either to Google Classroom. Google Classroom is much easier for teachers to evaluate, but to the learning management system, then they we have evaluated the scores and return back. I see that in my wife is a teacher, and I see that very often, very well practiced in my school system, where students are able to write exam, they upload the exams to the thing, and they are able to mark through mobile phones, they mark to hand, and they give the return back. I think, but I remember my children's teachers, they send back this report at midnight, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So that is a lot of hard work, a lot of difficulties on stress on teachers. And I think in that way, I would always love to come to country like Sweden or the European countries where your weekend is weekend. Now here, no weekends, no nights. Meetings are in the night. Meetings, weekends, there is no weekend. Sunday, there is meeting. But that, I think for those people in the European countries, they don't even respond to an email when you are a weekend. That culture we have to develop, but somehow that now taking a lot of stress on teachers. But this is possible. Now everything is possible. It's happening. Thank you. Sorry,
I can say that we are in weekend, so we cannot stress them actually here.
Yeah.
Or
here
we can say that we are in break today.
Yeah, here we tell students that okay, today and tomorrow is a holiday, so you finish the work by Monday. You cannot do that there. You will be questioned.
Here it's like it's considered as a human rights violation.
Yes. We do a lot of that here.
Thank you so much, sir. There's a common question for both the speakers. What is your opinion with regard to free education for higher education programs in India from Dr. V.R. Gerald?
I don't know. We are going to lose those thinking soon with the new education policy. That's the only point I can say. But rest is a politics.
Yeah, I think no. When there is resources, probably yes. But now, I know we look from that point of view. One is that if government has resources like in the developed countries, they can spend the education can be made very free. Now we have made that to school level. Higher education, how far it is possible, is a big question. But this the point lies in that new education policy and how you look forward to that internationalization of education and global universities coming to India. A lot of self-financing institutions, mushrooming of those are there. So I don't know. This answer is big question. But if there is some element of free education, then the overall system can be maintained well. If that is not there, then it will be going to corporates. So that is a big question in front of us.
Thank you so much, sir. There is a question from Ms. Tamil Selvi. Having common entrance exam for any course increases the standard. However, everyone is not able to receive same quality of education. Then how common entrance examination is suitable for all?
Is it a common question again?
Yes, sir.
So, no, the thing is, I cannot at least agree with the point, the common entrance and the standard increases. So there is no point when we are working globally, we know that the education is a process which enhances a kid or child from its school to the university and getting into like a tool for nation building. So when you want to build your nation, you want to take all part of people, every nook and corner of the country, to make it towards the process of nation building. If you are discriminating them, if you are eliminating through some common exam or particularly towards some filtering process, I feel the country loses the real strength. That's my point.
Yeah, so I just a few two sentences. One is that decentralization of anything in education can be a trouble. So now, see, you go talk about autonomy, talk about decentralization. So there are a lot of student-centric, learner-centric processes. So now in our education system, we focus too much on examinations from there onwards. So the education entrance examination to the examination in the classroom, those are all actually killing the quality of real quality of education if you really want to do it. So autonomy of education and going back to and I think most of the developed countries, I know from Australia many times, they stopped doing all entrance examination. And they found that there's no difference, somebody who gets high score in entrance examination and than a person who come with higher marks. And they prefer a person with high marks, which indicates their learning capacities. Probably that is better outcome they develop in terms of placement also. There are studies done in that light. So I think this entrance examination system is actually for a elimination system. So elimination system always has its own difficulties.
Thank you so much, sir. This is the end of the Q&A session. I now request the speakers to give their final remarks on the session.
As a first speaker, I take a privilege to take the first answer or the final point. Yes, of course, it's, as I told you in the beginning, it's a wonderful part of discussion. We need to discuss all the aspects to enhance our education system. This is the point, at least from the social workers' perspective, to bring on all the validated or authenticated points to give on to the society or to give on to the policy makers to make or framing the policy in near future and the next era. So in that way, I'm really proud to part of this discussion. And really, I wanted to thank Professor Janagi Anand Kumar, who brought me here. This is a wonderful discussion with Professor Anish, sir. I think I'm happy that we have many common points. That shows we are thinking in somehow the right way in developing our own nation or through our decentralized unit. Let's develop our states, then it becomes the centralized building unit for the nation finally. So that's my point. thank you for opportunity for my MSSW.
So I think we spoke enough. So thank you for this opportunity for especially Principal Raja Samuel sir, Damin, and all the organizers for this opportunity. And I think I just presented the glorified part of online education, which is, don't think that it's part of light education, but definitely we have to look at the other side of it. But since I've given another responsibility to talk about the benefits of this, that's what I focus too much on that. But still, I have personal experience, so nothing. I did not discuss anything which I have not done it. So that's basically which is possible, which we can all try doing it. So best wishes for all the students and teachers in this audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful knowledge sharing session. It had a lot of insight to the current education scenario in the pandemic. I thank both the speakers for clarifying and addressing all our doubts. Once again, thank you, our dear speakers. Now I welcome Ms. Rohini from second year to deliver the vote of thanks.
A warm good afternoon to everyone. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of PG Department of Social Work Shift 2, Madras School of Social Work, we extend a hearty gratitude to our distinguished speakers, Dr. Vijay Shankar Ashokan and Dr. Anish Kea, for accepting our invitation despite their busy schedules and sharing their thoughts, thus making this webinar interesting and an insightful one. It was a great thought-provoking session for all of us, sir. And thank you so much, sir. It would like to extend a special thanks to NIDM and coordinator, ma'am, Dr. Ajindra Walia, for your constant support and cooperation. I express my profound gratitude to our principal, Dr. S. Raja Samuel, sir, for his presence and constant support in this webinar. I would like to thank our head of the department, PG Department of Social Work Shift 2, Dr. C. Francis, for his moral support and guidance. My gratitude is also due to our webinar coordinators, Professor Jaswin Bose, Professor Damon Quinn, and Professor Priya Doris, and other faculty members for backing us and making this webinar a great success. I would also like to thank the Pegasus Forum members and volunteers for shouldering today's responsibilities and executing it so well. Finally, a big thank you to the wonderful students and the participants for your valuable presence and active participation. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. With this, we come to the end of today's session. Participants, kindly fill in the feedback link which is put on the chat box. The Zoom link will be kept open for the next 10 minutes. Do fill the feedback link. The next session will be held on 11th November 2020 on the topic COVID-19 pandemic crisis and opportunities for communities. Thank you.